Why did you decide to come to Ohio's first AAPI Day? What does this mean to you, and what do you think it means to the White House initiative for the nation at large?
I mean, I think it's an amazing event. When I heard this was like the first API legislative day in Ohio, I mean, you can hear about it in California or Seattle or New York where there's so many Asian Americans, but the fact that you're still kind of a growing community here, and that you've been able to mobilize, 300, 400?
So, yeah, I just have to get the final one.
300, yeah. So I think that's such a great example that we want to share with the rest of the country. Because, being on sort of the national stage about the fact that it's so important to engage with our government, that we're not going to be able to do the work we need to do without hearing from the community, and that the more involved we are, the more responsive government can be to us. So it means a lot for us to be here, and we really appreciate the invitation, and I think it speaks volumes to the level of organizing and passion and commitment of leaders here.
You decide to share such a personal story, and that must have been a tough choice.
I haven't talked about it actually in a really, really long time, and it happened about 10, 11 years ago that my brother committed suicide. But I think it's an important story to tell, especially because we tend not to talk about stories like that in our community, but especially the struggles of immigrants, and to really know kind of what motivates us to do the work that we do. So I think it's a large part of why I do what I do. So,
do you find that story connects to people and helps them get involved and tell their stories? Because, like you said, silence is a big problem in our communities.
Silence is a big problem. I think we tend not to complain or talk about our own personal issues. I know my parents are very uncomfortable doing that. I hope what it does is set an example, like to encourage people to come forward, that if I'm willing to do it and shed whatever facade and I think it also just connects us to people, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not the job description or what we do. It's our own personal stories. So, which was my point of, even if, when you're going out and talking to legislators, that it's important to have the information, but it's also important to be just very real about how this affects your personal life and your family and your community. So,
what are you going to take back with you from today's event? I know the day's not over and there's a lot more for you to hear, and you're going to some events later in the afternoon. What do you expect to take back with you, hope to take back with you today?
Lots of business cards. Great contacts, hearing from what people are working on, ways we can tap them into the work that we're doing on the national level. So I always hear about, where, and we're happy, we have a growing staff as well. We're going to have 10 people on board, so people working on health issues, on economic development. So wherever we can plug leaders into what's happening on the national level. I think it was great that we met with the advisory council too, because also the work that they're doing, and with the governor's office to support their work. There are commissions and councils all over the country, and I'm really starting to see that it would be helpful for all of them to get together and learn about what they're doing and share best strategies and best practices, because that is something we feel that we can do to help sort of bring those groups together, and not to feel so isolated in your own community or state, or to know that Asian American leaders in other parts of the country are also dealing with the same issues.
Well, it's great to know that the initiative is going to be such a great resource. I wonder what words of advice you have to some of the community leaders in that room, or just people who are starting to get politicized, or starting to think about what this means to them as they go back to their communities.
Sure.
I mean, these are communities that aren't politicized yet, and the work is just beginning, and it's going to be a long road.
Right.
So I'm wondering what words of wisdom or advice you have for them as they go back to begin the hard work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first thing I think about is that you have to start locally. You have to get to know the groups, individuals on the ground, to organize, let's say, your neighborhood, or to engage with other Asian American local leaders to get a sense of what's happening in your community or how you can better serve your community. In some cases, you have organizations already on the ground not there, so they always need volunteers, they always need resources. It's also important to just learn about the issues, what they are, read about whatever's coming out of the organizations there, or even a lot of the research or information that is on numerous websites, whether it's national organizations or government websites. I think it's about building that knowledge of that individual to say, okay, this is why I care about domestic violence, because I see these startling statistics, or this is why it's so important to talk about health disparities. Even the work of the Health Coalition and around Hep B, that 50% of all Hep B cases impact the Asian American Pacific Islander community. So I think just learning that kind of information is motivation to say, okay, what do I need to do about it? And I think the president really, in the work that he does and the inspiration he provided to so many of us during the campaign and now in his administration is that there's a role for everybody. And even if it's small and you can only do a couple of hours a week, or it's something you want to dedicate your life to, that there is room for everyone, and that we need everyone's commitment and involvement. And that's what we're going to try to do, to figure out. Because I've had different people come to me and say, oh, what can I do? And I think a lot of it is you have people who've been really involved for many years and have those ideas, and others who are like, I'm so interested, but I don't know what to do and what's my first step, right? I feel very fortunate to have had the experience of being at your first API legislative day, so congratulations.
Thank you.